Welcome. This is the February 7th meetup of the PCR Coast Division. We're going to have just a fairly calm meeting this morning. Not going to have any real heavy duty specific topics this week, but I did want to talk a little bit about some upcoming events. Actually, it's me and not Jesse. Wasn't sure whether Jesse was going to do this or I was, but fortunately I was in good enough shape too. So, few things. First, we did last 2 weeks ago, we did a modeling on the coast. Really great. We had six modelers, some really, really cool modeling that was shown. And that's all available on the Coast YouTube channel. If you go to the Coast YouTube channel and you get that on YouTube I didn't put a link here because it has to be a QR code or it's a long string. So just go to YouTube and type in NMRA Coast Division and you will get our YouTube channel. And you'll find it's right there. It's called Modeling on the Coast. It's easy to see. They're not fancy covers. We're not trying to sell these generally to the marketplace. So you can go up there and see it. It was really, I think, a really good event showing some great modeling and actually more folks showing their modeling there than we've had really since COVID. So the next modeling on the coast, I was hoping to do it in late March. Unfortunately, that ended up conflicting with O-Scale West and decided that probably didn't make sense. So we moved it to April 4th. So the next one will be April 4th. So go ahead and start planning on getting your pictures together. If you'd like to participate in the modeling on the coast, just send your 3 to 8 photos is good. If it's more than 8, that's fine. If it's less than 3, that's fine too. If you only got a couple, that's fine. Whatever you've got showing your modeling, just send those images. You can send them by email. If they're too big, you can send a link and I'll figure it out. But use the coastsup23@gmail.com. That's the account we have for the coast superintendent. And so easy way to get those two up to be put into a slide presentation. You don't have to do anything except say next slide and as you talk about your modeling. Ask you to include a photo of yourself so we can have a photo so everybody can see who's there, who actually did the modeling, especially if you're not there. Sometimes you plan on being there and something happens and you can't be there, and that way we've got at least a picture of you. And a short write-up, just a paragraph that says this is a model, ... Again, in case you're not there. So we'll talk about a few events that are coming up. They're all in the Coast Extra. I was, by the way, pretty excited that I just looked at Constant Contact before I came on. We're doing some Constant Contact tutorials for a couple of the other divisions. And I happened to go on and looked, and the Coast Extra that came out for this meetup, we had about 65% of the addressees actually looked at it. So that's really great. If you know friends who are NMRA members, you'll hear in the PCR, ask them, hey, did you guys look at the Coast Extra? Obviously, you don't need to look at every one necessarily, but it's good to check because it does pretty much have the events in it that are coming up for us. So the first event that's coming up is February 28th. That'll be the Coast Winter Meetup. That will be at the Golden State Model Railroad Museum. That's up in Richmond, on Point Richmond. There's the address and information is in the Coast Extra. We're going to have 2 clinics starting at 10 o'clock. I am still looking for a clinic, so if you would like to do a clinic there, let me know. Have a couple of potentials, but if someone would like to do a clinic, there's still space available.
Phil,
Yes.
you have my little Port Costa presentation scheduled somewhere on there, don't you?
I'm not sure where. I'll have to go look and see if I have something. Yeah, I don't know where it is, Ken. I'll have to find it.
The 21st of February.
But I think we were going to do that on the 21st before this. I have you down for the 21st, but I don't know that I have the presentation. But let me do this. Let me give you a call afterwards, and we'll go through it. Is that good?
Okay. Do a video with me, please.
Okay. Yeah, it's good. You'd like the transcription. So we will have lunch
Yeah.
Not exactly sure what that will be, if it'll be pizza or sandwiches. I'm not 100% sure on that at this point. And then we will have some layout tours in the North Bay in the afternoon. John Cockle is actually arranging those, and maybe even an extra little visit of something interesting if we can set it up. So mark your calendars for February 28th. The next event I wanted to note is O Scale West, which is March 6th and 7th. That'll be at the IEFS Portuguese Hall in Mountain View. If you're an O-scaler, whether you're a narrow gauger, a standard gauge two railer, or even a three railer, a great event to go to. Lots of interesting vendors. They're going to have, I think, 4 modular layouts on site and a number of layouts open. And they will have about, I think they have about 7 clinics that'll be done during the event. The next event is, this is kind of an announcement of an event. We're going to do a Roaring Camp day trip. We had this scheduled in 23. The first time it was scheduled, it actually got rained out. There was a huge storm that hit. They had trees fall down on the tracks in Roaring Camp, and they decided really to shut down the weekend we were planning on going. We ended up doing it later, but it was kind of a reschedule, and we didn't get a lot of folks that were able to come. What we've done is we've redone this. This is a weekend where Roaring Camp has their model railroad weekend, and the California Central Coast ON30 layout sets up in their big event hall. You can kind of see that in the lower left picture. Very large ON30 layout, lots of interesting modules, etc. What we'll be doing is actually about 3 or 4 things during the day. The first thing is there will be a steam up in the morning. There's some pictures at the upper left from when you get there, and they're steaming up the locomotives. So typically they have a Shay and a Heisler, and they steam both of those up in the morning, and you can actually talk to them as they go through the process of steaming up the engines and getting them ready for the day's work hauling trains up and down the mountain. And really kind of a fun thing if you're a bit of a steam aficionado to see how that's done. We're then going to have a shop tour. It'll probably be about 10:30, 10:45. Last time we did this, the chief engineer walked us through the shop and talked to us about the projects they were doing. They were in the process of rebuilding a Shay at that time, and talked about all the things they were doing to rebuild the Shay and the other things that are in the shop. We will have a narrow gauge, not a gauge, train at noon. If you'd like to jump on it, there will be a discount on that. It's a couple of dollar discount, but if you haven't been on a train, it'll be great. If we get enough folks together, we can go as a group together and ride up the mountain and back down. It's a fun trip. It's a typical narrow gauge locomotive and cars running up the hill and back. And then in the afternoon, we'll have some South Bay layout tours. There are a number of really nice layouts in the South Coast. It's often hard to go see those, when we have another event to set up and go see them unless you're down there. And this gives you all the reasons to basically come down and spend a day down there. So we'll be doing that. I may very well send out a sign up sheet, a sign up form on Google Forms for people to sign up. So we got idea if there are a number of people coming to take the train and do the discount. It's worth trying to ask them to put us in a car together or that kind of thing. So one of the things I'd be interested in is some feedback as we get done talking about this, about the interest in that. And finally, at 4:30 to 5:03, the end of April, beginning of May, we will have the PCR convention. That's going to be in Rohnert Park. Lots of great activities at a convention. Those of you who've been, you know this. There'll be great clinics. There are some great prototype tours. There'll be open layouts. There's going to be opportunities to operate on some great layouts up there. I hope Paul Weiss will be open. If you never operate on Paul Weiss's layout, great way to go operate and a great introduction to timetable and train order operations. Some of the prototype tours are cool. They have the sawmill, and I always pull a blank on the name on it. It's a steam powered sawmill that's there. It will be open on Saturday, and it was open at the last convention, and that was a really cool thing to see the sawmill. So that's basically all I have. So we'll throw it open for coast modeling. Um, just one question is how many folks would be interested in going on the train trip at Roaring Camp? Is there any real interest in that? Got one. I think I could be at one, two. Okay. I when we did this last time, I think only one person did it, and it'd be if we had 5 to 10 of us that went, we could go up it together. It's kind of fun to do that. I did that once before at another event, and it was a lot of fun. It is about $38, so it's not inexpensive, but it's really not that big a deal either. So, any comments on events? Does this sound like fun things to do? Go ahead, Jesse. Feel free.
Yeah. Well, I had th three things. One is I think it's very unfair that we're having Roaring Camp and the Coast Extra. Roaring Camp is on the day I fly to Spain and Portugal, and that's Roaring Camp, and the Coast Extra is 2 days, ends 2 days before I come back. So I'm going to
Oh, the
miss both of
convention.
those.
You're gonna miss
Yeah,
both
I'm going to
those,
miss both
both
of
the.
those. Um,
Oh well, you
you,
got to have your priorities. Got to have your priorities in the
yeah,
right place, Jesse.
I know, but I already bought the tickets. Uh,
Well, I'll tell you what,
the
Jesse, you lift a beer for us from Spain, and we'll lift a beer for you from here.
Bob, thank you. You're a sweetheart. I just wanted to mention two things that have come across. Phil and I spoke about something which I found as a really good idea, and that was Phil had mentioned throw the Saturday morning Post Extra meetup, or this right now, to all of PCR. In other words, have it open to Redwood and all the other guys. And because when we did the modeling on the coast, we got a lot of people that were not people from coast that were interested in that sort of stuff. And I thought, just as I don't want it to show of hands or anything like that, but I think that I personally think it's an excellent idea to make this a PCR activity every other Saturday instead of just you know, uh, there's logistics, etc. Not my problem. But anyway, so I just wanted to bring that up. And the other thing, modeling on the coast, um, so an old truism came up. Photos don't lie. And I'm never going to show my stuff again as long as I live. But we had some beautiful, beautiful models on this modeling on the coast. I was very, very personally impressed.
Well, Jesse, you can't bow out and not show photographs. Your stuff was inspiring. I need to do I need to do buildings with interiors. I really like the idea of having a building at a non-square angle and cutting it off. So, if you
That was
didn't
a
show,
lot of fun.
yeah, so if you didn't show photos like that, I wouldn't get inspired because I want to do that.
It's very interesting. I also do new tracks on Wednesday evenings. It's actually not evenings from the West Coast. It's 4 o'clock, but um, and one of the things we do is we have segments on different scales because it's intended to be very open to multiple scales. And the guy who does the N scale segments every 4 weeks is a young guy, and he's out of Memphis, Tennessee. I want to say out of Memphis, Tennessee. So he's and building, by the way, an amazing, almost full scale model of the Hell's Gate Bridge in New York in N scale, which is pretty impressive when you think about it. But he actually had a gentleman come in who's actually from Southern California, who's an N scale modeler who his layout was not what I would call the slavishly representation of the real world. It was much more whimsical. In fact, he had a cityscape where a number of the buildings were built by buying baskets at Deso, that Japanese store that's there, and took baskets of so that had holes in the side, stacked them and painted them, and they looked like skyscrapers. When you looked at that 18 to 36-inch view, they look pretty much like skyscrapers in a building. I actually thinking about doing something, trying to use that technique in the club in Pleasanton to do buildings. So I thought it was brilliant. But he built an airport, and this is not, I say airport, you think, yeah, this is an airport that I think is 8 or 10 feet, 12 feet long, has an airport terminal where the ceiling lifts off and it's fully detailed in the inside, and it looks like an airport terminal. It's got a tower. He's got airplanes there. He's got jetways. And you know what materials he used to build the whole airport? Legos. And you stop and think about it. But is it model railroading? Absolutely. Is it the same way as trying to construct a scene that's behind you that replicates the real world and people can't tell us the real world? Not necessarily. So, to my mind, everything goes. It's all about, our love for trains and what we like to do. So, Jesse, I loved what you did, because I think the idea of cutting a building open at the edge of the layout to show the interior is great. I have some buildings I've built. I have some buildings that I've built that are excellent interiors, very well done. The problem is, the minute you put the roof on them, you lose 80% of the impact of the building. The minute you take the roof off, it doesn't look like a scene anymore. And so you're caught in this, actually, I'll call the Sophie's choice of, do I keep the roof on the building where people are looking through the windows and they can't see 70 or 80% of the detail? Or do I take the roof off, in which case the whole thing looks unrealistic? So I think that idea of the slice through the building is as as said, it's inspirational. As Bob said, that's an inspirational way to think about what do you do, to not just accommodate a building and make it narrower, which is a lot of times what people kind of think and the reason for doing that, but it's actually more to show your modeling in a way that really exposes it so people can see it without making the scene look unrealistic. So I thought everything that was done last week was great. I thought, my thing of building a kit was the least of the presentations, quite frankly. So
In
anyway,
O scale, in O scale, I would have expected to see rats running along the joists supporting the second floor, but it
One of the things, rats, one of the things I did in HO was I had a barn scene in the far corner, and I found they were got to be that big pigeons. And I had a whole line of pigeons on the roof of this thing with white pigeon shit down the side. I think it was great. Bill, you mentioned something, and I want to just throw it into your bag of tricks here. Wouldn't it be interesting to every so often have one of the Saturday meets that was dedicated to one scale? Like I do ON30 and I do HO, and I have no idea what anybody else does. Well, I know what a lot of people do, but it would be fun to have just a little. We're just going to talk about N scale, and we're going to have a couple of pictures and that sort of stuff. It doesn't have to be a clinic or anything, but just sort of a show and tell, but as specific as L scale.
that would absolutely be great. One of the things that would be super is if someone and would say, hey, I'm an N scaler, I know 4 N scalers, let's have an N scale discussion, have people show what their some of their why N scale is a great scale. And the obviously N scale, you guys know, there was an article I wrote back in 2024 in the NMRA magazine about scales and that, and I could talk about that at some point if there's interest. But it's the idea that when we don't perceive scale the way it's expressed, right? Scale is expressed as 1/87th. And if you look at HO versus O, 187th to 148th, anyone who's done any basic math would say, well, that's about 2 to 1. So therefore, O should be about 2 times the size of HO. The reality is human beings cannot perceive anything in a single dimension. Our brains, that is if you think about it, a single dimension is actually a non-perceived concept. I mean, if you think about it, you never think about 2 lines where one is half the size of the other one, because that's really what you're saying. We perceive scale either as area or as detail. And area is a square relationship. It's how much area you can model. And detail is a cube relationship because it's the volume of the thing you're modeling. And so if you look at the difference between HO and O, and let's just assume for a second the 2 to 1 relationship, even though it's not exactly right, what that says is an area, if you have a given area, a given space, you can model twice as much in HO as in O, or not twice, 4 times as much in HO as in O. But O has O has 8 times the detail that HO has. And so what's interesting is if you go read that article, if you go back and look, you'll find a chart that basically puts those on a graph, and you find that S scale for standard gauge appears to be kind of the Goldilocks of the ideal match between area and scale. But it's kind of an interesting idea. So choosing N scale, you're choosing a modeling scale that has significantly less detail. Because if you compare again HO to N, it's again a similar relationship. If you compare it to O, it's an incredibly different relationship. But from an area perspective, you can model a much larger area. So, I think a lot of it's really what you want to model. If you like to model large vistas and see trains run through, great mountainous scenery with long trains, N is a brilliant scale. So I think that's a really interesting discussion, and something maybe that would be helpful. One of the things I'm always wondering is, what do we do to help new modelers who come into the hobby? Are we providing an environment here or accommodating them to understand what their choices could be? Because if you come into the hobby, it's kind of hard. You walk in and you see all the HO stuff, and the logical answer is to start with HO, but understanding that is a choice that's going to lead you to certain considerations where what you really want to model. Is it detailed? Do you like building real detailed things, which may drive you to larger scales? Anyway, that's an interesting thought to think
Hey,
about. How
Phil,
do you take? Yes,
I have a slightly different perspective that I'd like to share visually. The reason why I'm
sure.
going into N scale and N narrow gauge is not because I want to run super long trains, but because I want to model a prototype scene with less compression. I want to model Duncan Mills and the North Pacific Coast Railways without compressing the crap out of it. It's not going to be full size because it would be 10 feet long, even in N scale. But if it was 6 feet long in N scale, it would feel like the real valley looked like. So I'm trying to model a scene, not necessarily trying to run super long trains. But the other thing I wanted to point out is this is a Katy Microtrains NN3 boxcar. It has door latch details on it that you can't see that I can see that I could put on an HON3 boxcar by hand. I did this when I was 20, by the way. I still on H, and now I'm working on ON30. But the details that I have to do for ON30, like these little standoffs, were a little project in and of themselves. Furthermore, I'm interested in the longer term in Ken's F-scale model of the same thing. We'll get to that later, Ken. It's not a today thing, but so I want to model this boxcar in 4 scales, and I want to run in 2. I want to run in ON30 on Central California Coast ON30 modular layouts because I can run an 8 or 6 car passenger train beside, right? So anyway, I have a different perspective on scale. I wanted to share one other thing because I have to go in a minute.
Uh,
I'm working on. Go ahead, Ken. You were going to
uh,
say something?
a F-scale Carter Brothers box car kit ready for you when you're ready.
Huh. Okay, so I decided to do an NN3 module that was the same as my Central California Coast ON30 module, which is 2 by 4 feet. In N scale, it's this big, 8 by 18 inches, because I went with this is the actual road bed that I'm going to lay my hand lay track on. This is a template that I got from the NN3 handbook. I used that template to print out with a gray transparent cover on top of it. So I'm actually going to glue this on the road bed, and then I'm going to glue my ties to this. I have it gray so that when I glue ties, the paper below it won't show gray when I ballast. Because I thought if I used the white paper and I glue, then I might see white paper through the glue. So I got gray paper, and then I made some straight track that I'm going to basically glue down on my 1/8 inch masonite road bed, and then I'm going to glue um, wood ties and printed circuit board ties to that. And I'm going to start with the little section of track. Second. With the little section of track right here. So I'm going to hand lay this first. And that's going to be my first experiment in hand laying track in code 40 with ties. And then my next project is to do a stub switch here. And so when I'm done with that, I'll finish this. And then the N3 group has ultra lightweight module design that uses 3/4 by 3/4 hardwood framing and 1 inch of foam. So I'm going to try laying it out on top of that. So that's my NN3 work. For my boxcar project, I'm in ON30. I'm working on detailed interior. So I've been researching fruit crates and beer barrels. And unlike Phil, who has a 3D printer, I, without a 3D printer, will be modeling these by hand the old-fashioned way. So I'm sure I'll get a 3D printer and enjoy printing them in the future. But for now, I'm going to be building boxes out of wood the old-fashioned way. So that's what I got for modeling.
Actually, showing your paper there brought up a really interesting point. For those of you who watch the modeling on the coast, if you saw Ray Freeman's um, his layout he was building, and what he'd done was he had actually laid the layout in a CAD program and then taken it and had it printed and had laid those down on his bench work so that he actually had a very accurate map of where to lay everything. Um, Actually found out from one of the guys on the CCC group, the Alameda County library system has in the Fremont library I don't, that's called Smart or something like that, but it's basically a builder space. And they have 3D printers. They're filament printers, but they're fairly high-end filament printers. They do a very good job. But they also have wide format paper printers. They'll print 36-inch
Wow.
plain paper or 42-inch 42-inch, I think he said, photo paper. And I think there's a real deal with using it. It's either free, like if you do the 36-inch paper, it may actually be free. So, one of
Wow.
the things that I'm actually thinking I'm going to try for my next block I'm doing on my layout. I'm going to go ahead and lay it all out. I do this not in CAD because I could do it in CAD, but I'd have to learn the relationships to do it. I find it's really easy to do it in PowerPoint because PowerPoint is a drawing tool, as we've talked about in the past. I'm going to lay it out in PowerPoint and then take it over there to Fremont. I have an Alameda County library card, take it over and print it there. And I'm hopeful I'm going to be able to get paper printouts to lay out on my bench work because it's a pretty flat model. It's a model of basically Watsonville back in the 1920s. So I'll be able to just lay that out, tape it down, then use that to mark where the track goes and where the buildings go, et cetera, in full scale right on the woodwork without having to do what I've traditionally done, which is take a drawing and then try to relay it out, and I always end up with trying to erase stuff on the wood. So just an interesting thought that combining what Ray said, it's kind of why there's this great thing about the serendipity of finding different things out. Ray bringing up that as a great concept, and then Jay bringing up that, oh yeah, they have a printer like that in Fremont. So might be worth checking with your local big library whether they have a maker space like that and have some of those kind of tools available. I think they also, by the way, they had a vinyl cutter as well, which sounds to me like a Cricut or a Cricut. I don't know which way you say it. But another thing that might be interesting to use for some modeling, depending upon how you can get it and use it. Stunned silence. Anyway, anybody done any great modeling? Any new modeling, or everybody going to save their modeling now for modeling on the coast on April 4th? I guess just to go back to what Jesse said, does anyone think there's a real problem with telling the rest, so I'm going to meet next week. I'm doing some work on constant contact, which is how you get the Coast Extra with a couple of the other divisions that have not been using it and kind of walking them through to use it and how to be more effective in communications. I was going to talk to them about that. And I have not talked to anyone who said, hey, if we had 5 more people or 8 more people or 10 more people show up to this, it would be a problem. Is that kind of everybody kind of in agreement on that?
I think it's a great idea, especially if you're thinking about potentially having focus on specific scales on a weekly or on a per meeting basis.
I mean,
it's not
a scale, one scale, to it. So, kind of if you look at it, the way we're kind of going to have this going forward is I'd like to see us do the modeling on the coast about every 6 weeks. And so that kind of becomes a focus every 6 weeks. So 1 out of 3. If we have a clinic on the other 1 out of 3, that gives us maybe 1 out of 3 to have a focus like on a scale or something. So, that would say maybe every 6 weeks or 12 weeks we would do something like that. So that sounds good. Sounds very interesting.
Yeah, but
I'm going to look to you, Bob.
Better with twice as go ahead. Sorry.
No, go. I see.
I was saying it works better with twice as many people. I mean, a dozen people here. If you're trying to talk about per scale, you're going to get sort of scattered, right? And so if you had a 20 people or so, you have more people. If you're talking about anything other than HO, you want to have a larger group.
So is there anyone that either has themselves or has someone that I should talk to about doing a clinic on the 28th? So this would be at the Golden State Mall Railroad Museum. It's in Richmond. It's a nice facility. We have a nice room there. We can have about 30 to 40 people there. So if anyone, has someone you say, Bob did a great clinic on this or Joe, let me know because I'll ask them to come and do a clinic there. So.
Hey, Phil, since I kind of work there, maybe I can do a clinic.
Oh, that'd be great, Larry. It would be absolutely brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Larry is a mover and shaker at the.
Yeah, right.
By the way, it's a great club. If I lived on the other side of the bay, I've been going up to Jim Radke's to help Jim with some stuff on his layout, and from my house to Jim's, anytime except maybe on the weekend is an hour up, and especially in the evenings, getting home from there is a battle.
You gotta ask Larry if it's drop dead beautiful or a killer layout.
It is.
The thing is, it's not one killer layout. It's 3 killer layouts, NO and HO. So we've got it all, and we also have narrow gauge.
it's a club that appeals to the schizophrenic modeler that can't choose a scale.
Yep, and we even have
No,
bar training running on there.
it's a great club, and and I think continue. If you're anywhere, in the north/east bay, northeast bay, it is a club that's well worth checking out and considering. They have a great space. I'm hoping they're working out. There were some issues. The East Bay parks have had some issues, I think, with some of the different railroad activities in them. I'm hoping that's all getting resolved. So
Yeah, we don't have any issues. We recently
you
renewed our
don't.
lease last
Oh,
year, so we have no
oh, that's
issues.
good. That's
And the
good.
other thing too is if you visit us and you want to have a nice picnic, we're in the regional park, and right across the street are picnic tables and a shoreline and all that.
Yep.
That's nice.
No, it's a very, very cool club. And by the way, I think the auction, I have not closed on the date yet, but I think the auction is probably going to be at the beginning of June, um, when we actually have an auction. So I was looking at the dates, and it looked to me like June 7th was probably, I don't know, June 7th actually is problematic. I've got to go figure out what the date is for the auction. Um, and maybe it was May 31st was the date, but I will close on that fairly quickly.
Um, I just wanted, you had mentioned, Larry, about the regional park and signing your lease. Um, the grandkid was here, and we went up to uh, the Redwood Valley Railroad up in Tilden. Uh, the Redwood Valley Railroad has been operating without a lease since 2018 on a month-to-month basis, and they are in the process of negotiating their lease. So I asked if there was anything we could do, and everybody said, "Oh." So if you've got nothing else to do and plenty of time to do it, drop a note to the East Bay Regional Parks or Tilden Park or whoever's has an email address, and let them know that the railroad is important to you and your family as an activity in the park. I think that it might help, it might not help, but as I say, it just really was upsetting to find out that hey, you guys have 30 days notice. We're going to shut you down.
Yeah, there's something going on there because they even made it onto the local news. It was on the local news one
It
night.
was in November. There was a whole slew of things.
Sounds like politics or something. I don't know.
Somebody
Well,
said it was a new director.
Yeah, it was a new
yeah,
director or something. Yeah.
they've had some changes in the East Bay Regional Park management. There's if you guys talk to the guys at the Ardenwood folks, to Jackie Burgess, they've had similar challenges and discussions with some of the management changes.
Hmm.
And the question about whether that's a good public interest use of the East Bay Parks resources. Jesse, I think you've lit a fire under me. John Cockle's son works up there. Let me ping John and see if he can get from his son, ask them who is the right person to send an email to. And what I will do is if I can get the name of the right person, I'll put a block in one of the Coast Extras and say, help out, Tilden and maybe Ardenwood too. I'll ping Jackie Burgess also, and both Jackie and John, and try to understand who we should bring the pressure on. By the way, in the end, I think the biggest pressure is probably to call your supervisor if you live in Alameda County. So if all of us call our Alameda County supervisor and express our concern about losing these cultural heritages that are representative, I have to say we have the same issue in some ways with the fairgrounds in Pleasanton, with the ACCRS. And one of the things that I find really resounds with people is the idea that how many things can you, when you're 35 or 38 or 40 years old, take your 8-year-old son or daughter to go do that your parents took you to do when you were 8 years old? And there are
Oh,
so
to be
few.
30 again.
But what I'm saying is we get that all the time. I mean, all the time we have folks come through the ACCRS layouts in Pleasanton, and you'll have a parent come through and their kids, and the kids are all excited, and they'll look at you and say, my parents brought me here when I was their age. And that cultural continuity from a societal perspective and a community perspective, we need to continue to emphasize that to these political leaders, that while change is really good, having ongoing cultural continuity is important as well.
Yeah. I got to run, guys. Thanks for a great meet.
Have a good
I'll
one,
see you next
Bob.
time.
Thanks. Cool.
So was there, somebody said there's a new director at East Bay Parks now?
Well, there's been some changes in leadership at the East Bay Parks, is what I understand from, and I'm not actively involved, but from the folks who are involved at Ardenwood, I've heard that, and been some leadership changes, and there's of course we were talking about the issues with the Redwood Valley, that they haven't had a new lease in their location for a number of years,
Yeah.
and so I think as everything, there's always changes.
Yeah, I think I used to know the director, but I don't know whether he's still there.
Yeah. Well, if you could check, if you know somebody, you could contact him and ask him and say, who's the current director? Because of course that's the other thing is, both the supervisors and the director, sending a message to say, hey, this is important, is an important part of the community.
Yeah, I just took a look at East Bay Parks website, and the only people who are actual people who are listed are the board of directors. There's not one administrative or ranger person listed on the website that I can find.
That's weird.
What?
Joyce said that was weird. My thought was it's a great way to avoid anybody criticizing you. But anyway,
I think there's
by
a
the
lot
way,
of paranoia about, post 9/11 stuff where people don't want their contact information out there.
well,
I'm looking at CBS News right now. They showed this on October 25th of last year, and there's a statement in here that says the Park District declined to speak about the dispute, but offered a statement saying it is committed to the railway's continued operation with capital improvements that are, quote, fire safe and meet all fire code requirements, unquote. So,
Sounds like it's a money issue.
yeah.
Well, one of the challenges they may have, and I don't know, there was a huge issue on the Durango and Silverton around coal-fired locomotives, because basically they had some fires, and there was a concern by the Park Service or the Forest Service, because they run through Forest Service land, and apparently by their insurance carrier. And my understanding is they are prohibited from running a coal fire engine unless there is a certain amount of snow on the ground, because the concern is it can start a fire. And that's why I did a shop tour a couple 3 years ago at the Durango and Silverton. We went through the shop tour. They talked about that they had to convert all the locomotives from coal to oil, and the primary reason they did it was because of the legal issues and the insurance issues and the financial issues of running coal. By the way, the side comment was it was one of the best decisions they ever made, because it turns out when you have coal cinders, they're actually very acidic, and when they fall in the engine and wash down into the engine, they actually rot the metal away. When you have oil-fired engines, the oil encases the engine and actually protects the metal. So it actually turns out changing your engine, your heritage steam engine to oil-fired actually can extend its life significantly. By the way, the oil they use to fire those engines is all recycled motor oil from the Denver area.
Yeah, bunker
which I
oil.
thought was very. But yeah, exactly. But they said they get the recycled oil, which becomes bunker oil. So, by the way, I was gonna show this. We talked about scales earlier, so this is kind of this interesting thought around, what do you do in terms of scales. So this was the idea that, on the left you've got the maximum area, which is going to be Z scale that you could model, and that curve, that line is actually what's a single exponential curve, i.e. x squared. And then on the right you've got detail, where your most detail would be in G scale or F scale or whatever scale you want to call it for large scale. And then that is, because it's a cube relationship, it's a x to the cube, and so that line is obviously much steeper, and you can kind of see where they end up coming together. And I think the argument, if you ever read the article, was that, one of the advantages of going to narrow gauge and O scale is that you actually can get the detail level of O scale, but more area, because the cars are smaller and the communities and buildings and structures are smaller. And the interesting thing is to look at the ratios between those, right? Where if you start with, on G or F as being the one, i.e. the largest, or excuse me, the smallest amount of area, if you get to like N scale, it's 50 times as much area as G scale. From a detail perspective, Z has the least detail, but G has almost 3,000 times as much detail as Z. So it's kind of really interesting that, your choice of scale really defines a lot, can be defined by what you want to model and what gets you excited about your modeling.
Well, one way to get more area to model in is to model earlier periods where the buildings are smaller.
Exactly. Yep. Narrow gauge, the buildings are, because what's interesting is, because the boxcars are smaller and the buildings can be smaller for an industry to accommodate having a boxcar. It's very interesting. You see Larry's heading out. I think you have a board meeting probably now.
Yep. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a good one. Yeah, it's often very unprototypical to have 4 boxcars sitting next to a building that's barely bigger than the 4 boxcars, because industries tend to be a fairly large ratio of the area of the building of the industry to the number of boxcars and the volume of the boxcars that are supporting them. That's why. Yeah, industries like, a cement plant or things like that have a lot more traffic to their size than do, manufacturing facilities that tend to have a lot more area relative to the number of boxcars they have.
Mostly before 1900, you don't have that many options for transportation anyway.
Exactly.
You don't have trucks really.
Nope.
And you have foot and horse. That's it.
I have to go soon. And I wondered if you're looking for people. I didn't get here right away in the beginning. If you're looking for people who can do a layout tour, offer a layout tour. I don't think that PCR has ever been to my layout. And if you're looking for people, I could possibly have my layout on the tour.
Hey, Joyce, let me do this. Let me have so John Cockle is managing the layout tours for the 28th.
Okay.
Let me I'm going to send you and he an email right now, and let me do that so I don't forget, and let you guys talk about being open for the 28th. How's that?
A question, please. If I'm open, does that mean I can't go to the other layouts? Because I enjoy going to the other layouts.
Well, that's actually much more of a question for you than it is for me. I'm quite frankly, I exist in a singularity of time and dimension. If you can exist in multiple times in dimension, you can definitely do that. If you don't, it's kind of hard to be open from 1 to 4 and go see other layouts from 1 to 4, unless you can bifurcate yourself in some way. I'm being facetious, Joyce. Yeah, no, it's really hard. It's really hard if you're open to go see the other layouts because, from a time perspective, we have to have the time block kind of the same time.
Yeah.
So it'll
Okay.
be, yeah.
The other thing is rain has to cancel at my place because electricity and water do not mix. Um,
Well,
so
let
I
me
don't
do this.
know
Let
if
me
you.
let me you and John talk about it, and we can
Okay.
decide what makes sense.
Okay.
Um, we can kind of look at the 2 week forecast. But I think let me let you guys connect and we can have a quick discussion. But yeah, I've been to your place for I think you have a May open house. I've been there for that, I think, before when you have your open house, but that was the time that I was able to visit your garden railway.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, a lot of these events in the past, there's been a whole day devoted to layout tours, and usually people are only open for like 3 or 4 hour slots or something. So
Uh,
at least that's the past, but I don't know whether that might have changed.
well, we've kind of been doing, I mean, maybe this is, and maybe we need to really reconsider this and just say we should have a layout day. We typically have done is had some sort of a get together in the morning. And we've been doing this kind of North and South Bay. It's like we're going to do at the Golden State Mile Railroad Museum or at the South Bay Railroad Historical Society. Do clinics in the morning, kind of a social get together, discussions, and then have layout tours in the afternoon. I guess that's a great question. Would people want to do just a pure layout tour day in an area and just have layout tours? I mean, we haven't done that I mean, as far as I know, the PCR has, or excuse me, the Coast Division has not done that for quite a while. But that could be something. You said Jesse's saying yes.
I think it would be. I think it would be an interesting idea to take a day. Uh, I like the idea of a physical meet. I don't think we should replace that, but as another activity or that sort of thing. And it would be really nice because I have half-heartedly been trying to get uh, us to do things with Garden Railway. And
Yep.
obviously, they have some drop dead wonderful layouts. And in all sorts of areas. And I think that it would be great to have, okay, we're going to have a layout day and layout tour day, and you pick a geographic area so people don't kill the entire weekend and see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. We could. That would be something that more than willing to try. Do that maybe instead of doing kind of like a field trip where we've gone to, Niles Canyon or somewhere like that. Do a layout day where we don't have a physical meet per se. We just have a number of layouts that are open, and you can go to whichever one you want on your own. There are a number of other divisions and around the country that do that, that have open layout. I know in Atlanta, I think they actually have about 3 or 4 weekends where they have one day each weekend where they have open layouts. And by the way, if anyone is interested, I'll put the real caveat to all this. If anyone is interested in helping John and organize that, it would make it a lot more effective. So, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to jump off. Um, I've been asked to come over to the O Scale West. They're having a meeting, and I'm going to jump on that and kind of try to help them a little bit. So I'm going to leave this to Jesse for the rest of the discussion, since he's here, if the folks want to continue. It was great seeing everyone, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. And I hope in a couple of weeks, Ken is going to do a discussion about, I think, Port Costa, and we will go from there. So you guys have a great couple of weeks, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Phil, before you go, my
Yes,
band
ma'am.
is playing at Port Costa on March 28th, Saturday. We're doing there's going to be a fundraiser for the Port Costa schools, because it's such a small community. They have trouble getting enough money for their schools. And so it's going to be noon. I think it's March 28th. Let me make sure. And it will be, yes, noon to 6. My band plays at noon. And any of you who'd like to see my band in person or help support the Port Costa schools are welcome. It will be expensive. And they'll have food and other activities.
Yeah, that probably precludes you being open on the 28th then.
Oh, no, March 28th.
Oh, March 28th.
You
Oh,
were talking about February 28th, right?
Oh, okay. No, March 28th. I got the dates
I
confused. I'm
think,
sorry,
let me
March
check
28th.
that. Yes, March 28th,
Sounds
Saturday.
good. Okay, guys, I will see you in 2 weeks. Have a great one. Thanks very much for coming, and enjoy. And I'm going to
Take
leave the
care,
Phil.
meeting.
See you later.
Thanks, guys. Bye now.
Oh, thank God he's gone. That's a terrible thing to say. I'm such an evil person. I really am.
You know this is recorded and he will look at it.
You know, he really doesn't know how to turn it on. No, I'm really glad that he didn't die.
Yeah, really.
No, I mean, you know, it's from a management point of view, I think we at the Coast would really be lacking a lot if he wasn't available anymore.
Was there a risk that he would die?
Yes,
He had
he had
a heart
he had
attack
a
over at Jim
he had a.
Radke's, and
I didn't know that.
Oh, I thought you. Oh, that's right. You didn't weren't here in the beginning.
well, it was 8 days ago.
Yeah,
Oh my
but
gosh.
yeah, he was working on Jim Radke's layout and had all the classic chest pains, etc., etc. And Jim was clever enough to call an ambulance, and in less than an hour, he had tubes coming out of him down at the hospital, 911, and 95% of a blockage strikes me as a lot of blockage. So, yeah, it was really touch and go for a short period of time.
Yeah, as I recall, he had the classic male reaction, which was, "Oh, yeah, I feel weird and I got a little pain, but it'll go away
I'll
shortly."
go home and I'll lie down. I'll feel
And
better.
meanwhile, Jim's going 911,
Yeah, yeah,
which is a good thing. Glad he's okay.
yeah. That's for sure. Well, I hate to bring this up, but I had a couple of things that I had to do, and he posted. Does anybody have anything else I want to chat about before I shut us down?
Not really. For me.
Okay.
Do whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well, that being the case, I will wish everybody adieu and hope they have a good weekend and a good couple of weeks, and we'll see you all.
Take care.
Thanks for putting these
Bye-bye.
together.
Everyone.
Yeah, not a problem.
See ya.
Bye.